everyone, and welcome to another interesting conversation of change. Today, we have a very inspiration person. Subrahmanyam is the youngest Chief Executive Officer of National Solar Energy Federation of India. He is BITSAA Global 30 Under 30 award recipient. He is an alumnus of BITS Pilani in Electrical and Electronics Engineering. He is also the Chair of Renewables in Agriculture Working Group at IRENA Coalition for Action, and has also been appointed as UNDP Energy Governance External Advisory Group member. He's the recipient of BRICS Young Scientist Award 2018. And Subrahmanyam also specializes in solar module reliability and has published scientific articles across various internationally acclaimed journals. He is also the founding chairman of India-Africa Youth Energy Forum, a platform dedicated to nurture future energy leaders in the Indian subcontinent and Africa as well. A very warm welcome to you, Subrahmanyam.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here having this conversation.
No, it's absolutely our honor. We'll jump right into the questions. So in light of your inspirational career trajectory and notable achievements, we are eager to learn more about your role as the youngest CEO of National Solar Energy Federation of India. And could you please share some of your key responsibilities and initiatives that you undertake?
Yeah, sure. As the CEO of National Solar Energy Federation of India, I am responsible for running the secretariat, which is headquartered in Delhi. NSCFI is India's premier umbrella body representing the entire value chain of solar industry stakeholders. We are the bridge between the private sector and the government. We've been at the helm of policy advocacy since our inception 10 years back. This year we're celebrating our 10th year. Primarily as an industry association, our responsibility is to represent the concerns of the sector and the stakeholders of the government. At the same time, to act as a fulcrum to advocate policies that are in the interest of the country and the interest of our member companies, which is essentially the sector. Today, NSCFI has consolidated its place as the largest umbrella body, not just for solar energy advocacy, but also into storage, into new aspects of renewable energy, wind, of course, and was also venturing into some niche segments of specific application in the sector, like agri-PV, PV recycling, and all. Today, I think NSCFI has played an important and instrumental role in making India the 5th largest country in the world when it comes to installed solar capacity. We are just trailing Germany by 3-4 odd gigawatts. If things go well, we're going to displace them or replace them and become the 4th largest solar country by the end of this year. As a federation, we have seen the market evolve from a single utility scale based market advocacy. Today, we have around 8 committees in NSCFI itself, dealing with aspects related to rooftop, open access, manufacturing, utility, of course, the balance of systems, EPC, quality, and of course, we also started a new initiative for improving working conditions for women in renewable energy companies. We call it WISE Committee, Women in Solar Energy Committee. So yeah, it's an ocean now. When you talk about solar advocacy, it's just not a single agenda-driven advocacy. So primarily, my responsibility is to spearhead all these interactions, convene stakeholder meetings, represent the industry interest well with the government. NSCFI, by the virtue of being a larger advocacy body, has always been an integral part of the decision making when it comes to the key aspects from the ministry. So today we represent, or rather NSCFI is part of 6 to 7 odd committees set up by the ministry on various aspects, on PV recycling, on agri-PV, on benchmark pricing, on off-grid, on manufacturing. So we have to give sound and strategic inputs to these committees from an industry perspective that can help the government devise policies that are both not only conducive but can help us accelerate our renewable energy proliferation and achieve our target. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is what I do. Well, if you ask me, I bifurcate my job into two aspects. One is the reactive advocacy and second is the proactive advocacy. Reactive advocacy, or what I like to call as firefighting, is what I do 90% of my time every day. There's a new policy, there's a new draft, there's a new regulation, there's a new decision, and you need to react on it at that very instance. You don't have the luxury of time. So dousing fires has become part of my job. And 80 to 90% of my time goes into that. But we do have a very strong policy team that looks into the proactive parts of the advocacy. Like, what should India do in 5 years from now? Where are we going 10 years from now? What should be our trajectory? What will happen to the modules at the end of the life cycle? How can we ensure growth is given equal importance as spread for solar? So all these things are also part of the advocacy efforts here at NSC.
That sounds wonderful. Congratulations on the 10 years. And it's, I'm personally very happy to hear about the gender lens that you have to your work, getting more women involved in renewable energy. And I'm sure working with government has its own challenges. So that's very interesting to hear. So as solar energy becomes the dominant renewable energy source, governments worldwide have been working towards integrating larger quantities of solar energy into the electricity grid. However, some countries we hear have faced challenges with grid integration, while others prioritize storage integration. So drawing upon your industry expertise, can you please provide insights into the importance of grid integration for countries aiming to adopt solar energy on a larger scale, and as well as the successful approaches to address this challenge?
Definitely. I mean, let us approach it from a couple of different angles. When you think of any energy generation source, the basic idea of an energy generation source, conventional generation source, is that it is concentrated in large parcels of land at specific locations, and then you have to wheel the power out from that location to the remaining parts of the consumption modes. But somehow renewable energy has changed this entire paradigm. Today, if you look at it, solar energy is one of the few generation sources, or if I can take the liberty to say, is the only generation source that can be produced where you are consuming it. So that level of decentralization comes from solar energy. So the important aspect for any country is to find the right balance on how much of utility, large ground mount infrastructure you're going to develop, and how much of focus you're going to give on rooftop. There is no single acceptable formula for it. It differs from country to country. There are countries like in Europe, like Germany, where their total quantum of distributed solar or rooftop is more than 80% of their total solar installed. So that's huge. Even in Australia, there are more than 2 million households with installed roofs or rooftop solar. So that is one model. In India, if you see, today we have around 85% of our installed capacity comes from large ground-mounted, installations. So that is an advantage for us, given our land resources and all. So when you look at it from this perspective, grid integration is definitely an integral part of it. Either it can be from the ground mounted or from the rooftop. For the ground mounted, the challenge is much more bigger because you need a dedicated evacuation or transmission infrastructure. As I would always like to emphasize, there is no transition without transmission. So if you don't have a rugged, a very comprehensive plan to set up your infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, it is very tough to realize your country's goals of renewable energy installations. India is a classic case study of a success story here. The amount of transmission infrastructure we have added in the last 7 years is unprecedented, and we are going to double that in the next 4 years. So I think as a success formula for the grid scale utility solar for grid integration, I think having a very robust transmission or evacuation infrastructure goes on the top of the list. I've known from various stories from my friends in Europe and US that it takes 2 to 3 years to get the minimum permissions to set up to plan a transmission line there. In India, you have to set up a transmission line in less than 2 years, end to end. So that is the pace at which you're growing, and we have sort of cracked that part of the code. On the storage part, I think when you achieve a certain percentage or a threshold of renewables in your grid, and by the virtue of their generation source itself, renewables are intermittent, right? You can't control the source there. I mean, if it would be very good if you have a remote to control the sunlight that you can get every day on the earth, but we don't have that. So we are dependent on the inability of the light intensity in solar and the wind speed in wind for the generation that comes out of it. But accommodating that after a point of time becomes not only a challenge, but also poses a threat to the security. So that is when you bring in your storage elements. Today, you see India is on a path to a very ambitious storage target. We have a provision in the budget for viability gap funding for grid scale storage. I mean, it was also heartening to see the pump storage policy being released and guidelines are out and the bids are already on track. So I think we think about storage when we are actually serious about increasing the proliferation of renewables in the grid. And as a country, I would say we are on the right track. There is another model of it, like I said, centralized one and the distributed one. The distributed one, of course, you have countries like US and Germany where every rooftop also has a storage, which can be again controlled at their nodes and by the DISCOM or by the operator. That is another model. But all in all, storage can help you to augment your intermittencies that are available or that are the virtue of renewable energy generation source like solar. And I see an increasing trend where a combination of both decentralized and centralized storage will be, coming up in the countries who are very serious about their renewable proliferation targets and goals.
Thank you for the detailed explanation. So you've been working on international projects in Germany and Africa. How do you perceive the potential impact of collaborations between the country's companies in advancing renewable energy goals? And specifically in the context of skill development, what role do you envision these collaborations playing in creating opportunities for individuals?
That's a very interesting question. Today we are in an increasingly connected world. Like we are more connected today than we have ever been, and it's only going to get more intense. Surprisingly or not so surprisingly, renewables or even solar energy domain itself is more interconnected. A small event or a chain of events somewhere in the east has a potential to topple the entire plan of installation across the world. So while we are looking at hedging our supply chain vulnerabilities, strategic partnership with countries is one way to go ahead. Today, as a country, India is rich in resource. By resource, I don't just mean the land or the area available or the amount of sunlight we get, which is of course, we are one of the very few countries who have more than 300 days of sunlight, but also on the human resource side also. So I don't think it is even the remotest of the remote possibility that any country can do anything in solar sector without India being a direct or an indirect part of it. I see a situation where 6-7 years down the lane, India is going to be the largest manufacturing hub, and literally or figuratively, there will be a queue for Indian-made modules, given our access to the raw material and our labor laws and our access to affordable labor. The second aspect I look at it is collaboration on the technology side, where in the beginning of our journey, we have learned a lot of lessons from countries like the US, Germany, Italy, Spain, and even Australia, as a matter of fact. That helped us not only to understand how to do or what to do, but also what not to do. And now India has taken a very, very strong leadership role on the global platform through International Solar Alliance. So there are other countries, especially from the global south, the small island countries, least developed countries, and some high potential African countries who look up to us when it comes to effective solar policy making or dissemination of how can you scale up your capacity or how to ramp up installations in a short period of time, because as we are all aware, most of the island countries are at a very high potential risk because of the growing global warming and harmful effects of climate change. So I think that is the second perspective where I think India is an integral part of the entire world's solar growth story. Last but not the least, when I mentioned about resource, I was talking about human capital. Today, I've been observing a global trend where a lack of skilled workforce is a genuine problem. I mean, it's a default problem in most of the sectors, and especially for an emerging sector like solar, it's a by default problem. But India has the capacity and potential to, become the, the human resource capital of the world solar industry. We've been in talks with our German counterparts. I mean, a country like Germany needs almost 27,000 skilled workers and technicians to install solar, and they're now focusing on India. If we are in a position to train our workforce to go to Germany and install as per the German standards, imagine once they come back, the kind of knowledge they're going to bring with them. And 27,000 is a figure only for a country like Germany. There are countries like Japan with an ambitious target. The United States has an ambitious target. And other developed countries also have, a significant plans to ramp up their install capacity. So I see a mechanism where we're gonna be, like how it happened in the IT sector in the early or in the late 90s and in the early years of this millennium. I think India is going to be the hub of skilled workforce. To sort of act as a catalyst to this, we are going to launch a physical center of excellence with support of our partners to train skilled workers, predominantly to address Indian market, because while we're growing on the utility scale and rooftop, we're also ramping up our manufacturing, and that is also something that requires skilled technicians, albeit it is to some extent machine oriented and automatic, but you still need manual intervention at various parts of the value chain. So we're trying to develop curriculum and establish training modules that can help youth gain necessary skills so that they become proud ambassadors of our country when they're going out of the country.
I'm glad to hear you speak about countries in the developing countries and countries in the South. I grew up in the South Pacific on an island called Fiji, and we've had so many energy issues, and mostly during the times when we have hurricanes and cyclones. It's just been really, really sad to see that we can't really use solar energy at that time. So aligning with the question above, what advice or steps would you suggest to those interested in pursuing a career in this field, and particularly in terms of acquiring the necessary skills and knowledge to contribute to this sector?
That is a very tricky question, because today, if you would ask me this question 5-6 years back, the answer was very simple. Today, the answer has changed. Solar has evolved into a very multidisciplinary field today. Everyone has something or the other to be part of. I mean, if you're an electrical engineer, you have something. You have civil, you have something. You're mechanical, you have something. If you're a data scientist, you have something. If you have someone with the background of AI, you have something. If you're a project manager, you have something. So everyone has their role set out in solar, and it's only going to grow, and it's only going to be much and more diverse than it's already is. My main suggestion to young workforce, who are very much interested in pursuing a career here, is to maybe start from the nearest point of reference that they are familiar with. That would be a very good entry into the sector, because once you are onto the day-to-day stream of things, you learn much better. But for you to get there, you need a point of entry. So technically, in pure market terms, the barrier of entry to any young not skilled or not equipped with the relevant skills to this sector is very less, according to me. But whatever is required is a bare minimum, like I said, at the point of reference. Civil engineer can start with a simple point of the structures, or electrical engineer like me, you can start from the performance side, and then you can find your way. But that is something that is a very important thing. The second aspect is on the skill, specific skills part of it. Today, I think we have as a country understood the necessity and importance for green skills. Not just as a country, even the United Nations has, acknowledged it. And I don't know when this episode will be telecasted, but August 12th, which is generally celebrated as Youth Day, UN is going to dedicate that this year's Youth Day to green skills. And so that shows the importance and the emphasis the green skills are taking across the skill development spectrum. So I also am happy, and I'm also very it's very heartening to see bodies like the Skill Council for Green Jobs and other skill development agencies coming out with courses, entrepreneur courses, technician level courses, engineering level courses, to sort of bridge the existing knowledge and the required skill among the youth. We are also going to launch our virtual solar academy at the end of this year. This is for early and mid-career engineers who are in a sector and want to shift from that sector to renewables, especially solar. So we're going to make modules. It's going to be fully virtual, and we're doing this with the support of our partners in the German association. And we think this is going to act as a conduit for more young engineers and early career engineers or otherwise to adopt or to switch to solar as a domain of their profession.
That sounds really interesting. We'd love to keep in touch and learn more about this course that you're going to be doing at the end of the year, and hopefully we can promote it to our audience as well. So could you provide insights into the policy landscape in India for agri-PV and its potential to drive sustainable agricultural practices while simultaneously generating solar energy? And also you have in previous forums highlighted the round-the-clock and hybrid RE power. Could you simplify this for the larger audience and share how they are shaping the renewable energy landscape?
Sure, definitely. I mean, both of these are some of the key proactive advocacy measures we have taken at NSCFI, and we have seen a lot of success here, and they're very close to my heart. When we talk about agri-PV, today, from an Indian perspective, we know we have a lot of our GDP coming from agriculture. We do also know that agriculture, electricity is a very vital element, and most of the time that electricity is either offered for free, or it is sort of a burden on the discoms, or it is something that the problem has been perennial so far. On the other side of the things, solar is increasing. We are almost at the verge of running out of land, but we have a larger target, and distributed is the key. So how can you sort of juxtapose both of these problems and find an optimum solution? And we have not invented or discovered something. We're just using what has already been existing for a long time, which is co-locating the land for both solar and agriculture. The idea of this is that you can use the same land for producing your crops as well as producing the solar electricity. Now, when you go back to nitty-gritty, we have a lot of things that are part of it. And to address that, we're going to launch agri-PV events a couple of days from now. We're trying to bring all stakeholders, because whenever I talk about agri-PV, I am biased to talk only from a solar perspective. At least that's the knowledge I can probably say I possess. But I don't have enough knowledge or information to talk from the agriculture side of things, from the financing side of things, from the community side of things, from the farmer side of things. So when advocacy is being done without full-fledged or the entire view entire purview of the things that are happening, then that advocacy is not, it's just halfway. So we're trying to bring all these stakeholders onto a single platform and this platform will act as a main body for advocating agri-PV in the country. What kind of crops can be grown? What incentives can be given to the farmers? How to safeguard farmers' interests? Land is something that has an emotional value in our country, and there's no way we're gonna do something that does something against that sentimental value. Solar, of course, is of a high priority to everyone in the country, and we are very serious about it. About the role of solar in our fight against it. So how can we bring both sensitive and important things together and ensure that the proliferation of agri-PV happens well in the country is something that we're trying to do. The ministry has already formed a committee. I'm part of the committee. We are deliberating on the policy measures. As a federation, some of our members have already executed some agri-PV plants across the country. We have documented the pros and cons and the learnings from each of these installations. Through this alliance, we want to go to states and districts and try to sensitize the farmers and see how this model can be implemented in states. So that is on the agri-PV part. On the hybrid and round the clock, I think today the very I mean, if I go back one step, I always believe every challenge is an opportunity. Today, the main challenge for solar or renewables is intermittency, but that is also an opportunity for us. So while we are switching or transitioning from a grid which is pure play, predominantly dominated by fossil fuels, to a grid which will have almost everything catered by renewables, you need to have a non-intermittent or a firm and dispatchable power coming out of renewables. That can only happen with, like I said in my previous remarks when you asked me about storage, that can only happen when you combine renewables with storage. So we have been advocating for a firm and dispatchable kind of a power for the last 3-4 years, and we have seen huge success in the bids that the government of India has brought, and from that some states have learned it. Maharashtra did it last year. I was told Punjab is doing now. So the way round the clock or hybrid works is that you as a company, as a renewable service provider, you will be asked to supply firm power with this much capacity utilization factor for the peak periods of the day. So let's say 2-3 hours in the morning and 2-3 hours in the evening. That's a peak power tender. So, and then throughout the day, the remaining non-peak hours, you can supply also at a minimum threshold. Now you cannot supply throughout the day with only solar or with only wind. So you'll definitely have to have solar and maybe wind plus a storage component, so that as a combination, this entire system is going to produce power round the clock, or can produce power or energy as per the requirements of the bid or as per the requirements of the off-taker. In most of the cases, that off-taker is DISCOM. Nowadays, that is changing to commercial industrial companies are also showing interest in procuring power from the round-the-clock bids. So the renewable power combined with storage, when it has the capacity to produce and generate energy round the clock, so you call it round-the-clock power. And when you're not just having solar, but you're also having wind, so that is solar-wind hybrid, or you're having solar wind plus storage, that's that kind of hybrid. So it's not plain vanilla solar or wind, but it's a hybrid. So those are the hybrid tenders. So we have both of these kinds. So we have hybrid tenders, we have round the clock, we have peak power tenders, like I said, which want some power specifically for 3 hours in the morning and the evening, and then blanket power throughout the day. And the tariff changes. The peak power, you get more tariff, other non-peak, you'll get a flat tariff. So this is how this works. And I was there in Munich last month, and we were all exchanging with Spain, Germany, India, Brazil, and America were all exchanging their experiences on round the clock and hybrid. And I was very surprisingly happy to see we are the only country who can talk about round the clock or hybrid in gigawatts. Everyone is talking about it in megawatts and kilowatts. We already graduated to gigawatts. So I told them that we no longer are having the problems we had before. So we have graduated to first world, and we have more first world problems now, so-called first world problems. So I think as a country, we have discovered the lowest round the clock tariff. In the middle of the first wave of COVID, we got the lowest tariff in the world for the round the clock. So that's a huge achievement, and that speaks about the resilience of the sector as well as the planning that is involved. So I think the way I look at it, the future is going to be very market-driven installation specific. Today we have a lot of tenders that accumulate to our demand and the growth story. While that will be going on, we'll also have dedicated, I think, market forces who are going to drive the market mechanism, which will help us increase our capacity. So agri-PV, round the clock, hybrid are going to dominate, if I may say so, the intensity of renewable installations. They're already doing it in isolation, but maybe the intensity is going to grow more in the next 3 to 4 years. So I see I see a time where we will no longer talk about having just a solar plant.
Very interesting. Just a follow-up question on the agri-PV. Do you think the farmers will, I mean, are there like major challenges that you feel like you'll get from the farmers in terms of getting this on board?
I mean, I have interacted with some of the farmers, and I would wish and hope I would interact with more of them. The main challenge I personally see is on the awareness. Right? If they're aware of how it works, they would want nothing else. If they're not aware, then they don't want it at all. So that's the only challenge. The remaining parts of it, I would still think are more on the operational side, which can be accommodated at a implementation level. But on a broader level, I think, and it is also unfortunate, and I'm also guilty being part of this exercise where we have never involved them in this discussion. Always when I talk about agri-PV, I talk about from a solar perspective. Right? I have never gone and asked a farmer, okay, tell me how much agri-PV is going to happen. Now when I'm doing it, and since last 2 years I've been on field, I visited almost all agri-PV plants in the country since 2019. When I interact with farmers, they say, we don't even know why we didn't do it much before. One, it is helping you for income. Second, there is a hypothesis which in some parts of the country is proved that it is helping you increase the quality of the yield for specific crops. And third, of course, you have a lease, which is a fixed income, is always there. So come a rainy day, figuratively or literally, you are still safeguarded. So these all aspects can only be understood when they get to see. So we are trying to propose a mechanism where, at least in high potential districts, if we can implement pilots with the help of Krishi Vignan Kendra. Today, every district has a Krishi Vignan Kendra, KVKs. So if that can be done, I think that is going to act as a very effective tool, according to me, to bring awareness. Other challenges are there, and I can go on and on, but for me, this is the main challenge.
The main one. Okay. With your extensive background in electrical and electronics engineering, along with your research focus on the reliability of solar PV modules, we're curious to know what sparked your interest in solar energy and what motivated you to work in this space. And also if you can share some of your experiences and how your journey has been so far.
Well, the irony is I come from a predominantly coal power producing town in the country, southern part of the country. So in my town, which is around 200 kilometers from Hyderabad, 80% of the habitants work in the coal mining or coal power plant. So I've seen it in and out in the early days of my childhood. But my focus has always been on, we used to have a lot of issues in having reliable access to electricity from beginning. So that point was always pricking me that why can't we have electricity fully throughout the day. So that is what pushed me to electrical and electronics engineering. And in my BITS days, I was very fortunate to have my mentor, Dr. Rajneesh Kumar, who willingly and forcefully brought me to the solar side of the things. And I have not known what solar is, how generation happens and all. From being that, at the end of my graduation, I published almost 15 research articles in different journals. And that's very rare for an undergrad student to do in any place, and especially in BITS Pilani. So that was sort of a huge trigger for me. And I was in Rajasthan. So Rajasthan is today the largest state in terms of installed capacity. And for me, visiting solar plants was like a weekend task for the project. So I was fascinated by how it works. And my main work started on the soiling part of it. In Rajasthan, though the potential is high, dust gets accumulated on panels very frequently. And how to address that was a huge challenge. So companies were interested in finding a solution, and they've requested academic institutions like us to find solutions for it. And somehow I ended up in that project. And most of my research work till today, which has significant models developed on it later, is on is on that reliability path. How can you increase the performance while decreasing the losses during soiling? And I think that helped me understand, or rather, if I can put it in this way, young people, and at least of our generation, I don't know whether I should call myself a millennial or zillennial or Gen Z, but we want to see the impact of things that we do. Right? The attention span and the patience both are proportional. So if it takes a lot of time for you to see the results of what you have put efforts for, then you either lose interest or you don't regard it high in your priority list. So for me, at that engineering stage, to see every small thing that I do creating an impact on a practical level was something that was very intellectually awarding. And that's how I've shifted my full focus. I've never thought I'll be in the policy side of the things. I always saw myself on the research side, when sitting in a lab with 15-20 students and like engulfed with a lot of power electronics equipment and modules. But yeah, fate has its own way of bringing you to the place where you're supposed to be. And I think one takeaway from my journey, and I also had a small stint as an entrepreneur to sort of implement what I did in lab on the ground. I would say there was some success I tasted there too, not to an extent that I would want. But then my focus shifted on the broader picture. I was thinking, why am I limiting myself to a very niche part of it, while I can broaden the aspect to the major challenge which has been pricking in my mind since my childhood on the energy axis. So that's when I shifted to microgrid research. I went and presented at BRICS Energy Forum. I won this Young Scientist Award in 2018 for my microgrid operations model. And that gave me a confidence that, having know-how of technology, being a good researcher is rewarding in one way, but to see the impact of the research that you've done on ground has a greater satisfaction. So that's when I made up my mind that I want to work in this subsector where I can see the impact. So although today, whatever I do, I don't see a direct impact on ground. I see the impact in terms of the policy drafts and policies and regulations, which will of course get translated on ground. So this is still a very satisfactory experience, I should say, for someone of my age. And I would like to end by saying, a lot of forums, a lot of public platforms, wherever I go, they ask me this question sometimes to spite me about what is the most important and powerful energy generation source known to mankind. I mean, they would expect me to answer that it's solar energy. But I think I strongly believe and stand by my words that solar is not the most intense or impactful energy generation source we found. The youth energy is the most powerful energy generation source. If you're able to capitalize on that, it can catalyze us to a better future, which of course is hinging on the young people of our country, of the world. And I personally think, there are a lot of people like me who are doing phenomenal work at a much younger age. And if given platform, all of them can be the real change makers and help us get the planet that we want.
Thank you so much. That was very inspirational. And I'm sure everywhere you've gone, you've heard how motivating and inspiration your journey has been, right? From being such a young person to be leading such a important organization. But we at Climate Asia are very inspired by you and the work that you do, and we give you our best wishes.
Thank you very much.